Good morning. This is Sharon Black reporting for Struggle La Lucha, April 17, 2020, on Palestinian Prisoners Day. We have Miranda Bachman with us today. Miranda is a young Jewish activist who organized a car caravan from Baltimore to Washington, D.C. to support the protests against AIPAC this year. She is one of the founders of Youth Against War and Racism and is presently helping the People's Power Assembly and the Prisoner Solidarity Committee with a protest in support of Maryland prisoners and ICE detainees. Miranda, could you tell us about today's Palestine Prisoners Day and why it's so important?
Yeah, definitely. So this week has been a week of solidarity with Palestinian prisoners who are imprisoned in Israel. So right now, Israel is committing a really racist system of apartheid against Palestinians, and this has been going on for decades now. Palestinian prisoners are really kind of on the front lines of the resistance against Israel and its apartheid policies. There's about, according to Samidoun, Palestinian Prisoners Network, there's like 5,000 Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons right now. 180 of them are children. 430 were jailed without any kind of trial or any charges. And many of them are also sick or disabled. So, you know, this is especially important right now because the COVID-19 crisis is going on. And we know that here in the US, a bunch of jails and prisons are the biggest hotspots next to nursing homes for COVID-19. It's sick people, disabled people, elderly people who are the most susceptible and vulnerable to COVID-19, to catching it and to perishing because of it. And in these jails and prisons, there are already like such unsanitary conditions. We know that in US prisons, if the infirmaries are tiny, and we're actually hearing reports that healthcare, access to healthcare is getting worse now with COVID-19. So given how brutal the conditions are in Israeli prisons, we can only guess that if COVID-19 starts to spread in these prisons, Palestinian prisoners will face equally, if not worse, conditions than those prisoners here in the United States. You know, among kind of the things that go on in these prisons, particularly what happens to Palestinian women prisoners is really awful. They're often tortured. They're subject to physical and sexual assault, same as, you know, many male prisoners are tortured and assaulted. And women are also, when pregnant, they're giving birth, they're shackled to beds. They're often not allowed to see their families or their children, same as male prisoners. And when they're menstruating, they often don't even have access to use the bathroom. So conditions are really, really bad. And if COVID-19 starts to spread, it's a genocide. Yeah.
It sounds like a humanitarian crisis, to say the least. I was wondering if you could comment on the recent U.S. medical, the news that the U.S. is medical protective equipment is being literally sent, that is diverted to the IDF. And what is the IDF? A lot of people don't know that.
Right. So the IDF is the Israeli Defense Forces, and it's the military for Israel. And the news was, I think on April 9th, Press TV and then also the Jerusalem Post reported that over 1 million face masks, test swabs for COVID-19, and other protective gear were shipped to the IDF, sponsored by the United States. So not just shipped to Israel, not just shipped to the Israeli government, but shipped straight to the military forces there. And then actually, I just saw a report from the Times of Israel this morning that 3 million face masks arrived. I don't know if those are together or separate, but I mean, it's extremely ironic and messed up that the U.S. is prioritizing arming the Israeli military with protective gear, with PPE, before it even, is giving face masks to essential workers here in the United States. And it really shows that the United States, the rich, the corporations, their priority is not the people here in the United States. It's not saving lives. It's not providing ventilators in hospitals. It's not providing relief to healthcare workers or safe conditions for Amazon workers. It's about continuing to fund its imperialist ventures overseas, continuing to use Israel as a puppet to spread imperialism and wreak havoc in the Middle East and on Palestinians.
Thank you. That, in fact, when you talk about the Israeli Defense Forces, in the US, you hear all sorts of cases of police departments across the country, certainly in Baltimore, who've been trained by the IDF. And, we have a major problem with police terror right here at home. I have one last question for you, Miranda, and then we'll let you go. And that is, can you tell us a little bit about the protests that are set for tomorrow in Maryland around the jails?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been hearing reports that conditions in prisons are, as atrocious as they already were, are only getting worse. And for those prisoners who are suffering from COVID-19 symptoms, things are happening like guards are denying them showers, soap, outdoor time. They're just being isolated in their cells. Things are only getting worse and worse, and prisoners are not being supplied with any kind of adequate protective gear. It's all going to guards, if it is at all. So we have organized a caravan that's meeting in Baltimore City, and we're going to be riding out to the Jessup Detention Center in Maryland, and we're going to be demanding release of all of these prisoners, not just some, but all, during this COVID-19 crisis. And this is super important because, again, these are concentration camps for the poor, and already we have a genocide going on, but with COVID-19, without any kind of infirmary, safe healthcare access, people are just gonna die by the thousands. So we need free release right now.
Thank you so much, Miranda. Thank you for taking the time. And I know that you'll be in the struggle to free the Palestinian prisoners, just like Struggle La Lucha is. Free all them all. Free them all.
Free them all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.